Hey, Chapter 7 is a little bit more fun. Hopefully stuff you can grab a hold of. It's one I get myself in trouble with because you're going to disagree with some of the things, some of the positions I've taken here and stuff, and that's okay. You can push back if you like. I've had people go tell the dean that they disagreed with me. That's all okay, and that's part of this is that you get to think about a little bit, but you'll see I adamantly disagree with a number of things the authors contend here, and it makes me a racist and everything else. There's only about 11 to put in here. The lecture is long, but you don't have quite as much to do, so I hope you enjoy it. Chapter 7, I say it's stuff you're a little familiar with, and it'll just take you a little bit deeper in it. Diversity in Society and Schools, Chapter 7. First, let's take a look at where we're going. The first part of it is on race and ethnicity, and you'll have to distinguish. Look at these very closely because there's several questions on the test separating this race, ethnicity, immigration, and then this disparities in education. And same with this, the socioeconomic status. Questions on the test ask you to separate these topics. And so you have to have a solid understanding and comparison of those. Language, I'm going to ask you to carry some of this and talking about how language, especially this about dialect diversity, and then there's different approaches, and there's tests, questions on the test about that also. Gender, and then sexual orientation, exceptionalities. I don't think they do a service to this. They touch on it and see how that affects schools and stuff. But as you know, that's a whole nother course. Religion is glossed over fairly quickly here. We'll try and pull that apart. The effect religion has. And then this multicultural education, I'm going to ask you to carry some of this also, but you will have to be able to discern these different terms. Incorporating, responsive, validating, ensuring, equal opportunity, equal results, practicing, teaching for social justice. That's really a good one. There, they bury you with that one. So that's where we're going. It's long, and I'm going to clip along here for you. So the diversity, let's jump over a couple. Where they start out talking about what is multicultural education, and they throw this word out, and I never can understand how you can put this word in something as morally, that someone would tell you and me what is morally correct. I'm not quite sure where that comes from, and I don't know what you base morally on, but apparently there's some common set of morals that we understand that they feel needs to be in here. I don't know where it comes from, but it kind of bothers me that we would talk about something morally, because to me morally is a spiritual aspect that comes from your faith, and they kind of poo-poo faith in here, it seems like, and so I'm very interested. Several times I'll make reference to morally things, moral things, and I'm not sure what that is. But regardless of this, and you as teachers have heard this before, regardless of their socioeconomic status, ethnicity, race, language, gender, religion, sexual orientation, ability, it doesn't matter. You, as a qualified teacher, will have the best in mind for all those areas. Lift up kids as teachers and respect of getting them to do their best. And I think they get kind of carried away here on this, but I have faith in you as a teacher to look beyond those things and see them as individuals and lift them up and encourage them and love them, no matter what their backgrounds or what their families are like. And I know you do. And for the most part, people that get into teaching that want to be teachers understand that. Talks about multicultural education in the school activities. The history and experience of groups studied throughout this is not simply periodically adding Black History Month or Women's History Month. It's integrating it through all your teaching and curriculum. And that's one of the beauties of Common Core Standards. They have done that for you. They decided how much of this to integrate into your curriculum. Let's see. This chapter will explore the groups to which their students and their families belong. Each section will discuss how a student's membership generally impact the student's educational. So first, race and ethnicity. I don't know why I have trouble with that word, but I do. but it talks about two groups here. The American Indian tribes and Alaska Natives are the only indigenous to this in the United States. They're the only ones that are here. So 99% of us are immigrants, the population, or their ancestors came here from some other place. And again, this is not profound. I didn't have to tell you that. Since our ancestors emigrated, a growing number of people have mixed heritage with ancestors, and so this is what we're going to do first. Is you're going to tell me what that is. Number one, it uses the word emigrated. Number one, what is the difference between emigrated and immigrated? And again, you're doing a good job of keep marking that in red so I can find what you're trying to tell me there. But it uses that term without explanation. And so you will lay that out for me. And then it goes on to these different ones, like the ethnic groups based on a national origin of ancestors, or a panethnic group based on just the origin from the continent. Simply the continent. Two different things here. Pull them apart. For example, you're either from Africa or Asia or Europe. That would be your panethnic membership. Panethnic. One of the nation's policies, practices, institutions. As a result, whites have advantages that are reflected in higher achievement on tests, higher incomes, and adulthood. This issue of race encompasses personal and national discussions of affirmative action, immigration, desegregation, colorblind society. Race and ethnicity may be linked, but are not the same. Both influence our cultural identities. Having a greater knowledge of the history and experiences of the diverse groups attending your school will improve your understanding of the students and families, and it can be fun and enriching. I taught in a diverse school, middle school, and it is very enriching to work with different cultural families, especially if you come from a homogeneous background like I did, where all of my world was white. And so it was really neat to work with different families and get to know them. And I worked with a lot of new people to this country that had been here a very short time, that didn't speak the language and stuff. And at times it's challenging, and certainly at times frustrating, but enriching is a great word. You're going to come back to this. I'm going to beat on this a little bit later, because these authors are really into this white privilege, white advantage here, and I want to push on that a little bit later. So what is race? The first physical characteristic we notice when we meet another person is gender and race. And there's no doubting that. Let me go back here. We notice the physical characteristics, our ideas about race are created from our own experiences and reflections in the media. And yes, media tells us how to feel, how to think. And not only, when we think of media, sometimes we think of news, the news shows and stuff, but it really is much, much more. It's more has to do with entertainment things, movies and programs and music and TV shows and stuff like that. But skin does not fully capture the meaning of race. And let me take you back to this. Positive high status of our own race. This is interesting, this highlighted here. Our stereotyped views of race usually bestow positive attributes and high status on our own race, and negative attributes are lower status of others. And I think that's an excellent comment. I wish there was some documentation here. That's their perception. I don't know how true that is anymore, but it's their observation. They certainly would have documented here. Skin color is a signifier, but it's certainly not the meaning. A lot of mixed, and this is what I think is changing things so fast, is how our races and even our panethnic backgrounds are getting so mixed that we see folks that have everything. Even the current president of the United States, President Obama, is this. His mother was as European as could be, and his father was African American, and so he, even though he's dark complected, he's as much white as he is not white and non-white. So he really has become that leader for that. Goes on here, person of color usually identify themselves with their race or ethnic group, are confronted with the race almost daily encounters with employers, salespeople, colleagues as they watch the evening news. Whites, on the other hand, are seldom confronted with their race. In fact, they seem themselves as raceless. White has become a norm against which persons of color are classified. As a result, many whites are unable to see how their race has privileged them in society. And I think that's interesting. And what I was pushing on this is this stat here, and this is just the poverty rates in the country and of white privilege. And if you look at it across the United States, the number of people that are considered impoverished, here's 25 million white, and the next closest one are Hispanics at 17 million. And so somehow we forgot to tell these 25 million that they're privileged, because they're still in poverty, considered in poverty. But that's a pervasive thing throughout the text here, is that's what's wrong, is the white privilege. You know, and if you have a problem with me saying that, you need to go to the dean and tell the dean of ed if that offends you. But that is their theme through here, even though they don't have any documentation. And like I said, they forgot to tell this group here about that. National origin of our family and the primary determinant of our ethnicity, and that would be true for all of us. And you know what your national origin is and where that comes from. Let me jump back here. Again, are unable to see how our race has privileged us in society, and I'm telling you, I came from very, very modest means. My great-grandparents were new immigrants to this country and came here with absolutely nothing, and built their way into society and lived full and meaningful lives. And maybe it was because they were white, but it wasn't easy, and they never considered themselves poor or underprivileged. They were poor, but they didn't consider themselves impoverished at all. And I say, here is the thing of that. And I was considered impoverished. I got free reduced lunches as a white boy 40 years ago, and so I was part of that group. Okay. So the primary determinant, yes, is our origin, and why is it we do that? Because we share these things with our origin, and it strengthens as members as we support to those groups. Okay. Okay. Here's the thing I want to show is this: what the makeup of our country is, and I have that here for you. Is still the biggest percentage, 64%. Are white or non-Hispanics, and then here's the Asian group is 4.8, black or African American 12%, two or more races. And I say, and this gets a little sticky because this is all self-identified. This comes from the Census Bureau, 2011, the census. So it's whatever you mark on the box, and so I would think this would be much bigger than it is, but you get to decide. You self-identify. Here's the biggest, fastest growing one, the Hispanic 16%, Native American at 1%, a shrinking number here. So that's the makeup of it. And schools are early recipients of this. Unauthorized immigrants do not possess appropriate papers. That's an interesting term, I think, the unauthorized. Here they're talking about who they are. German. That's me. My great-grandparents came here from Germany, and almost 100% German, and came here. And I think the authors do a great job of going through here, and you look at this of all the different places and origins people have come from. It's very, very interesting. I say, and part of that is the Germans, and at the time from Europe, this was the biggest group that were fleeing there. And I do have, I think, 1/8, or now it's 1/16 Polish. On my mom's side, one of my great-grandparents were half Polish, and so that's so. And this is interesting too, and I'm going to ask you to bring this in by the year 2050. The European Americans will comprise less than half. And if we go back here to this, right now it's 64%, and they're saying by 2050 it'll be less than half. And so that will be, let's put that right here, we're going to say this is number 2, and it's by 2050. And again, you'll make that nice and red for me. Less than half. Okay, so how about immigration? The United States is often referred to as the land of immigrants, and you and I know that. And I say 99% of us came from immigrants who left their original homelands because of economic hardship or political repression. Now, this is how history has changed. When I was studying history 40 years ago, you know why people came to this country? You know, my great-grandparents came to this country for religious freedoms. Religious freedoms. They were oppressed. Their faith in was being oppressed. The church had a state church. Why our founding fathers were so adamant about not establishing a state church, a government church. And so it's so interesting that now in the histories of my kids' history books, that's been completely scrubbed out of there. I'm not sure why, but I'm telling you, that's why that clause came in there, because so many of us Europeans came here for religious freedom, to worship God as we saw fit and not be bound to the church. The only oppression we ever get is from government. Government was oppressing us. The government said, we have a state church and you shall do as the church says. People don't oppress us, governments do. And so it's so interesting to me that's been scrubbed out of our history, that we came here for religious freedoms. But I don't get to change that. Maybe you do in your time. Maybe you talk about that. But here it goes on to say, however, this picture is only partially true. The groups that have suffered most from discrimination are those indigenous or whose ancestors entered the country involuntarily, meaning they were here. Okay. So it talks about that. Ancestors of most African Americans were brought involuntarily to be slaves. And that's what I'm going to ask you to do here. It does a nice job of going through these different groups. And so here's the African American, here's Latinos, how they came, and here's the unauthorized part. And I don't get that terminology because that really is not unauthorized, they're illegal. They came here. They're in this country illegally, and so I don't quite get how we can use that term. So I'm going to change this here. They've broken the law to get here, and so they do not possess the appropriate papers to be here. And it doesn't just the ones that came across the border. Some came here on visas that expired and they're still here illegally. Federal law, not DSU law, not Tim Fegan law, not South Dakota law, federal law has established this. And we just decided in the last 4 or 5 years not to enforce that federal law. And so we have more here. And they make a case in the textbook about how we have less. Where is that here? You constantly face deportation, loss of everything they've gained. You may know students whose parents are arrested, things like that. 62% of Hispanic students have at least one foreign-born parent. So what I was saying earlier here, I'm going to ask you, this is interesting too, let me show you this about the Chinese Act, that it says here, and I don't know about this, that they felt there was too many Asian immigrants, too many from China. So they put this law in 1882 saying that there'd be a way less of them. And then, of course, this is the big one that you don't hear anybody talking about that I think will happen again, and that is in World War II, when the Japanese invaded Pearl Harbor, we started to round up the Japanese in this country and put them in internment camps. And then it was, they were held there, and they just wouldn't allow anybody to immigrate from Japan. They thought they were infiltrating us. It'd be interesting to see where that goes going forward, but that's why I think that could happen again. It may be me, maybe me this time that's in the internment camp, but we have a history in this country of twice rounding up those people and putting them in prison just for what race they were. Oh, the other one besides the Japanese? Well, that's what we did to the Native Americans too, is we rounded them up and put them in reservations and stuff. So we have a history of that, and I predict it'll happen again in your lifetime. And just from your background or who you are, not what you've done. It will give you a ticket to that. So you be aware of that and see that that don't happen, because I'm going to be old and not be able to help myself. But I want you to identify these, how these different groups came to be here. The first of the African Americans here, and then the Mexican Americans here that are here legally, and then the Chinese here, Americans, well, they came, and the Europeans came here. And so I'm going to say this is number 3, and you're going to talk about each of those. There are, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yes, African Americans, Hispanics, Chinese, Europeans, and so those 4 groups, why they came here, why and how. And again, because you're going to want to know that for the test. So that's number 3, and there's 4 of them. 1, 2, 3, 4. Do that now while you're thinking of it. I'll wait for you. Okay. And then schools are early recipients of it, of new immigrants. They're affected first before the general population. More than 1 in 5 students has at least one parent who was born outside of the United States, and that's an incredible stat. And of course, that still comes from the Census Bureau, which is self-identified. There's nobody marking that. Somebody, each one of those are filled out by the individual people that are counted, and of course, not all fill them out, but you self-identify how you want to be identified. And immigrants today are settling beyond the traditional urban. Traditionally, California, Florida, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, Texas were by far the biggest ones with immigrations. But now, of course, they're reaching here into the central United States and the red states here in the plains. As you know, we have more people new to this country than we used to have. And they're just looking for, more opportunities. They migrate in farther to get better jobs. And, of course, still freedom of religion. We fail to talk about that. And some oppression with that, becoming more diverse at a faster rate. And here's this table that talks about that, and that is here, the kids that are in school are in green, and then the population is blue. So the white kids, we still have more people in the population than we do in school proportionally, but that's the only one. Well, in gender also a little bit, but it's just trying to make the point is they get into school, a percentage of them show up in our schools sooner than they do in general society, or certainly create some awareness. So then this racial and ethnic disparities in education, and students of color have a long history of inequitable treatment in society and education, and have closed the achievement gap. And that's what I like to hear, that I'm tired of hearing about the achievement gap. And I think we can lift everybody up with you, quality teachers that have good training and a good heart to lift up everybody. And I can't imagine a scenario where you're picking and choosing who to lift up based on their racial or ethnic backgrounds, but that's what's implied here. And today's schools place a greater emphasis on academics of all students, regarding their race, gender, economic status as students. And yet of color, except for Asian Americans, are not yet participating at the same levels as whites in higher level courses and programs, nor scoring at the same level. So why is that? Why do Asian Americans, let me go back here if you would, to this here. Here's the thing. Asian Americans representing 5, let's just call it 5%. Why do they not fit here? Let me read that sentence to you again. Although today's schools place a greater emphasis on academics for all students, regardless of their race, ethnicity, and gender, or socioeconomic status, students of color, except for Asian Americans, are not yet participating at the same levels as white students in higher level courses and programs, nor scoring at the same level of achievement tests. Okay, for example, African American student participation in advanced placement courses, performance on AP exams is far below that of other groups. What is it with these Asian Americans? And so I'm going to take you here, and we're going to go back to this week's, and we're going to put let's have a nice robust discussion about that. Why are Asian Americans more successful in school? And it's without exception, and that's what all through this chapter we have to keep making these caveats of why or of this group does not fit. So they're immigrants, they have all the same thing, but for some reason they don't fit the stereotypes or the narrative we're trying to make here. And I don't know what to make of that, and I would like a nice, robust discussion about why that is. So please respond, and you've done a pretty nice job. Some of you omit this in your studies, and I'm going to put that over here now on the notes. Where are we at here? Okay, I'm going to make this number 4 discussion. Discuss Asian Americans. Okay. So they don't fit. They seem to do well, even though they come under the same circumstances and stuff as everybody else. Hispanic students are more likely to be in math class taught by teachers who have not majored in math. And they give a good case here of what happens. And just listen to this if you allow me. So they have less participating advanced. Hispanic students of course, our performance on AP is far below that of other groups. Hispanic students are more likely to be in math classes taught by who are not majored in math. And that, again, No Child Left Behind was to address that. The classes in which students of color sit generally have more students than any other schools. They change schools more frequently than white students and have greater fear for their safety in schools. So why is that? They change schools. People of color and low socioeconomic status change schools more frequently, much more mobile. The mobility is way higher. And when I taught in a low-income school, it was unbelievable. About a third of our students turned over every year during the school year. A third left, and a new third of them came during the school year. And so it's very interesting, that change. All these factors have affected cognitive development and academic achievement. So could I put that in here also? What number was that? That was number 4. Number 5 is, why are they more mobile? Why do students of color and low economic students more mobile? Why do they move so often compared to the others? You address that there. So let's go on to this social economic status, SES. And from here forward, that'll be the term. And you'll hear about this on and on in your schooling and in everything you do. We'll talk about SES. And that's just a measure identifying a family's standard of living. Standard of living. Our families has a great impact on our chance to attend college, attain a job that requires material and comfort in life, and determining one's occupation, income, and educational attainment. Wealth and power are other important factors that affect the way one is able to live. But the data is difficult to measure. We may be able to guess a family's socioeconomic status, such things as where they live, their jobs, the type of car they drive, and the schools where their children attend, the types of vacations they take. You know, look, yeah. And you knew that. That's not new and profound to you. You knew that. So this social stratification, and I'm telling you, there's a ton of questions on the test about this. So this is what I just gave you. Social is the primary indicator of family or standard of living. It impacts chance of attending college and obtaining a job. It is measured by occupation, income, and education, mostly this one. And possible indicators is this neighborhood where they live, the type of job or car one drives, school that children attend, the types of vacation the family takes. Okay, so that, and again, I'm telling stuff you know, but the biggest thing from all this is the income they have, because that income is tied to obviously occupation, education, your ability to attend college, even attain a job often has to do with your income because of how you are able to dress. And it's so much deeper. It's an entire course, entire graduate programs on studying this intricately. But there's so much more that goes with it, because folks that aren't well educated speak differently, don't have the same vocabulary. There used to be a commercial on the radio that said people judge you by the words you use, and those words come from education, and it shrinks education, learning, schooling dramatically expands your vocabulary and the words you're able to use and understand. And part of that comes from reading. The more you read, you get verbs, you get vocalization, you get more words and vocabulary. So here's the social stratification, and I say there's about 5 questions on this on the test, so make sure you have a solid understanding of this. It has to do with the ranking of individuals and groups along social structure, right? And there's a thing on social structure here. Here's class structure. But let's just look at this here. Wealth, income, occupation, and education are key variables to this social stratification. Race, age, gender, religion, disability also contribute. Okay, and Northern, Western Europe backgrounds are at the highest level. And social mobility, highly valued, difficult for poor to do, to go upward. Okay, an individual from wealthy families positioned for success. And they make this like it's a bad thing. Okay, so I'll go right here. Social mobility rate is one of the core values of the culture. We are told that hard work will lead to a better job, higher income, and better chance to participate in a good life. Read stories of individuals who were born in poverty, but through hard work became wealthy as corporate presidents, successful writers, athletes, entertainers. Although upward mobility continues to incur, the chance of moving from poverty to riches, no matter how hard you work, are low without interventions such as college and lots of good luck. And I reject that completely. I firmly believe this yet, that people that study, that can lift themselves, as a teacher, I wholeheartedly reject this whole notion that the only way out is good luck. Education is obviously the silver bullet, but we have a lot of self-made millionaires that are not educated people. And I don't have to go back. Times have changed. My father is not an educated man, has done quite well for himself, as a lot of our ancestors did. But even today, this country, you still, other than the oppression of our government, there's still, we all can succeed. And you, as teachers, will be instrumental in that. And I think that's what we do to kids more than anything, is we breathe hope into them. We encourage, we uplift them, no matter what the scenario. And so it just bothers me that this is the contention of this author, that you can't do it, it can't be done. And I wholeheartedly disagree, and I hope you will join me in that. Because the author's contention is this: individuals who are born into wealthy families are likely to attend good schools, finish college, and find high-paying jobs. They are raised with high expectations, have the economic resources to assist them in meeting these expectations, usually end up meeting them. And I think they make that as a bad thing. They're insinuating here that this is a bad thing, and what they're absolutely insinuating, it's not fair. So would we contend that the thing we should do is limit the access that people from affluent families have to good education so that it's more fair? That's the contention here. That's where I adamantly disagree with that. And you probably disagree with me, and that's okay. But as teachers, this rubs me the wrong way, because I think that's one of the things we've done to our kids is, in fairness, in the name of the fairness, we hold back kids that could do more. And we don't have enough expectations of any of the kids. And I could whine about that for the next 15 minutes about my kids' examples of that, of them not expecting enough, not pushing them, kicking them hard enough. So, like I said, make sure you know some of this terminology. There's about 5 questions on the test about social stratification. Then class structure, and this is very interesting that they break this down, and you know this too, but there's a working class, supposedly a middle class, and an upper class. and it gives you some different things for each one. Let me just read you. The working class manual work, working class or blue collar workers usually have little control over their work. Work is often sporadic, limited benefits, often requires little education. And then income ranges from 38, this middle class, 38 to $100,000. 40% of the population are in middle class. Did you know that? Includes professionals, managers, administrators, wide range in lifestyles among income continuum, usually attain professional or advanced degrees. And I know there's a lot in middle income families that are not college educated, but doesn't seem to fit here. And then, of course, the salt here is the upper class, the wealthy and socially prominent families, limited interactions with other classes. Children really attend public schools, and that's, for the most part, in our area here, we don't know this group of families. This is often comes from what we call old money. And so, yes, they often go to private schools, same gender schools. They often go to, their formal schooling is often in boarding schools and stuff like that. So rarely do we see a truly upper class people as our classmates here, in South Dakota. So let's look at that here. Like farm labor is a big one they talk about. Most people don't perceive themselves as poor. They fall in here. This is interesting too, and I don't understand these authors how they're jacking this around here. But let me read you about middle class professionals, managers, administrators in this group expect to move in a more affluent upper middle class as they progress in their careers, with the goal of becoming of the 11% of the families that earn more than $150,000. And again, that's by the U.S. Census that they get that thing. Census Bureau. Don't click on Census Bureau, yeah. So anyway, so 11%. And so they said that's the goal of middle class, is to get up there so you make more than $150,000 and you'll be in the top 11%. Professionals are men and women who have usually obtained professional advanced degrees. They include, and this is interesting, teachers, lawyers, physicians, college professors, scientists, and psychologists. And again, they include teachers here, but you'll see in a minute they're going to quickly run from that. But the thing is here, for the most part, a lot of teachers don't hit 150,000, but a lot of teachers will break the 60,000 barrier that they said is the average in this country. Highly well. But look how they run from that now. Excluding teachers, most of these families earn far more than a median income of 60,000, and I disagree with that. That's early in your career, but you get to the coast, to either coast, and 60,000 would be an average teacher salary, not the top. And so it's very interesting, their contention here, to quickly cut those out of there. Successful executives and business people are the managers and administrators in this group. Listen to this phrase here in dark. These workers usually have more autonomy over their jobs, working conditions than working in lower middle class. Okay, I want to ask you this also. This is, again, what bothers me about this contention that's here. These people that are become the managers and administrators, they have more autonomy in their jobs and better working conditions. But what do they also have? They get the headaches. They are in charge. They're the first to lose their job. They're the ones that get fired if things aren't going right. They have more job changes than a lot of other folks. It's kind of like administrators in our schools. They make more money, but holy smokes, they have more headaches. That their job is to deal with the headaches. And so again, that's in this discussion from these authors, they don't mention that. They simply are contending that in this lack of fairness, they make more money. And here's the other thing, teachers. We all have that same opportunity to advance to that level. No matter what these authors say, we all have that opportunity to advance. We're still in the United States of America. And yes, it's going to be harder for somebody that doesn't get a good formal education, that comes from different backgrounds, but it can be done. And that's what we as teachers do. We encourage, we uplift, we love, we support. Don't go with what these authors are contending that it can't be done. It can be. The upper class consists of wealthy, socially prominent families. The income, wealth of members of this class are far higher than those of other classes. The gap is growing, and it's grown more in the last 5 years than it had in years prior to that. Protests such as Occupy Wall Street in 2011 brought attention to these salaries. And man, do you remember that group? You're going to get to do that. They really made a mess of things. I'm going to put that right. I'm going to bring it back here. Occupy. You would have to have been asleep not to hear of that. I want to see what number on. Run number 6. and I know some of you thought that was great, supported that, but I want you, number 6 is, you put a statement in here what Occupy Wall Street was about. I know there was lots of arrests, there was crimes, and they let them sit in the federal parks on the National Mall there without contention. They let them do a lot of things that nobody else could do, but I know it created a lot of problems. And the worst thing, the people they bothered the worst were not the upper class that they wanted to punish. All the people in Wall Street that were just folks like you and I doing their jobs in the middle class, the ones that really got punished through all this. So I'm not sure what it all was, and it was just very unbelievable in this country that we would do that, but we did. And the textbook here is, in my opinion, endorsing that. 1%, and I'll read this bottom to you, and this is what I'm saying, that these authors are into this. 1% that included corporate chief executive officers and Wall Street executives. The incomes of corporate chief executive officers have grown dramatically over the past 30 years. In 1980, they earned 42 times as much as the employees. By 1980, they earned 85 times as much. In 2010, the multiplier growing to 325. And that's what's so interesting, is that it continues to increase, is that gap. But again, what we're not allowed to talk about here is what responsibility they have in those also. And we can point out some very, very bad ones that are very, very corrupt, but we leave off the 95% that are honorable people that give their money away and take care of people. Doesn't fit the narrative, so let's not talk about that here. Again, it contends that this group contribute to limited interactions with members of other class. Children in these classes rarely attend public schools. They're isolated from peers of other social classes. The greatest assimilation of lifestyles probably occurs among members of ethnicity and culture groups in the upper class. Okay, so how about poverty? Let's go back and look at that. And this, you found this earlier church study, is the guideline is $23,000 for a family of 4. Approximately half of the income needed for basic needs. In 2009, nearly 43 million people and families lived in poverty. And again, I will say to you, the greatest number were white. 25 million versus the next closest 17 million, 12 million. Percentage-wise, not, but number-wise, this represents the greatest number are whites. Of the 43 million, 25 million are white. And that's 10% of all families in poverty. Children, the elderly, and other persons of color suffer disproportionately from poverty. Okay, so let's go back to the text and see what it has to say about it. 14.3, it says here, 8 million families, differences in poverty among different groups due to disparate education, incomes, unemployment, all those things. The median income of white families is $62,000 in 2009. African American and Hispanic families 61 and 64% income families, and so they lay that out here. Thus, 44% of the children lived in low-income families, often making eligible for free or reduced lunches. And that's the thing too, that you see this number and it breaks your heart, but you realize if you stay under this number, you qualify for about 14 different federal programs. Not your free lunch, but you also are entitled to housing, heating oil, a free phone, car assistance, insurance assistance. I mean, if you can keep if the number's under here, you're entitled to a bunch more programs. That your entitlement is dramatically raised, and it's still not a great existence. But as the saying goes, and it doesn't fit the narrative here, you're not supposed to talk about it, but it's a lot better to be poor in this country than in any other country in the world, because of how well we take care of our poor. Impoverished people that are in poverty, I say, do have cell phones, do have TVs, do have music, do have iPhones, iPads, a lot of things that everybody else has. And I think that's a real attribute to our society, that we take good care of this. But it doesn't fit. Like I say, you see the authors here, they're beating more on this thing here about how unfair it is, the people that make money, and not about how well we care for these.